Good evening and welcome to Altos, your weekly Catholic news program here on Trinity TV and now showing on the national television station TTT. I'm Neil Parsonal, your host. In tonight's program, Archbishop Gabriel Malzay of Castries St. Lucia has made an intervention into the conflict in the Grenada Church. The High Court in Dominica has recognized the rights of same-sex attracted adults. The Diocese of Roseau responds. We journey to Cyperia for the annual La Divina Pastoral celebrations. Archbishop Emeritus Robert Rivas has a message for the country regarding family life. And later we'll be talking about caring for newborns with well-known pediatrician Dr. David Bratt. Now for our top story. As the impasse between Father Gerard Paul and Bishop Clyde Harvey deepens, regional church leadership has stepped in. Here's Associate Editor Simone DeLochan with more on this story.
On Wednesday morning, Archbishop Gabriel Malzay, Metropolitan Archbishop of Castries, released a statement of intervention after Father Paul's public defiance of a reissued suspension by Bishop Harvey. The suspension was reinstated as Father Paul had breached the agreement to make no public utterances which could bring the church into disrepute. The day after receiving the second letter of suspension, Father Paul told his congregation last Sunday that he was not accepting it and would operate as he has always done. Further, he intended to begin a petition across Grenada to have the bishop unseated. In the statement of intervention, Archbishop Malzay expressed sadness at the continued disregard by Father Paul for the headship and the policies and processes of the Church. Reiterating Bishop Harvey's appointment by Rome, Archbishop Malzay reminded of the requirement of clergy to both obey and respect the office of the bishop. He stated the removal of a bishop must follow the laws and procedures of the Church, and until such time that this happens, respect for right order must be observed. Archbishop Malzay also expressed his willingness to consider any objection Father Paul may have against his suspension or the bishop. Archbishop Charles Jason Gordon, president of the Antilles Episcopal Conference, came out in solidarity with Archbishop Malzay. In a short note on his Facebook page, Archbishop Gordon said he supported Archbishop Malzay's decision to uphold Bishop Harvey's instruction in accordance with right order, and he continues to pray for a peaceful resolution. I am Simone DeLochan for Catholic News, Altos.
And staying in the region, the Diocese of Roseau, Dominica has reaffirmed the Church's position on marriage and sexuality after the Dominican High Court declared as unconstitutional Sections 14 and 16 of that country's Sexual Offences Act, which punishes homosexual sex. In a statement issued earlier this week, Monsignor William John Lewis, delegate of the Apostolic Administrator Archbishop Gabriel Malzay, said the Church acknowledged the dignity of all individuals and advocated for compassion towards people with same-sex attractions. However, he said the Church maintains the belief that sexual acts outside of the heterosexual marriage are inconsistent with the Church's teachings. The Catholic Church emphasizes the importance of upholding the sanctity of marriage and the family as foundational to the well-being of society. The case was first brought to the court in 2022 by a gay man who said he had faced discrimination, hostility, and horrific violence in Dominica because of his sexuality. Local Catholics are being encouraged to give generously at the special collection for Haiti to be picked up at all masses this weekend. Archbishop Charles Jason Gordon had previously announced that the collection would have taken place during Eastertide. In a letter to all priests, Vicar General Father Martin Sergiu said the collection is an urgent corporal work of mercy as the situation in Haiti is dire. The funds collected will be sent to the Haitian Bishops' Conference. Dioceses across the Caribbean are expected to have similar collections before the end of the Easter season. And going even further afield, the Christ the King Roman Catholic Church in Miami, Florida, buzzed with prayer, praise, worship, and fellowship over 3 consecutive nights from April 16th to April 18th, as Couva Parish priest Father Trevor Nathersing embarked on a retreat delving into the essence of faith and the sanctity of the Eucharist. Roger Sant has more.
Here Proclaiming that the Eucharist stands as a testament to God's enduring love and presence among his people, Father Nathan Singh said, through the sacred sacrament, we are invited to partake in the divine mystery of Christ's sacrifice and resurrection, experiencing God's real presence in the consecrated bread and wine.
So when we talk about Eucharist, we are talking about that which is absolutely unique and gifted to us. Absolutely. And we must not treat this as if it's like anything else. It's not. Because this is the last legacy of Jesus, you know. This is what Jesus left us before he went to die, you know.
Yes.
Because the next day was crucifixion.
Amen.
The three-night retreat themed the Eucharist, core of Catholic Christianity, was organized by parish priest Father Joseph Jean-Louis and attended by parishioners from the Christ the King community, with praise and worship led by Marcelin Peters of St. Anthony's in Point Fortin. Declaring that without faith, belief in the Eucharist is impossible, Father Nathan Singh warned against complacency in approaching the Eucharist, saying receiving the Eucharist without proper reverence is to desecrate something sacred.
What you receive in the church is an earthly participation in a heavenly reality.
Hallelujah.
We, in a small way, are sharing in what we are preparing for, called the eternal banquet.
The three-night retreat ended with Holy Mass and the exposition of the Blessed Sacrament. Father Nathan Singh in his homily reminded the congregation that the gift of the Eucharist must not be taken lightly, for with it comes a responsibility.
The Eucharist is the food for servants,
Amen.
not for warriors, for servants. The Eucharist empowers us to become better servants in the world. And I don't mean servants to clean somebody's house, you know. Servants to bear witness to the power of the gospel.
Amen. God so loved the sinful world that he gave his only begotten Son,
That whosoever believeth in him shall have everlasting life.
Roger Sant reporting for Catholic News Altos.
And moving from Miami to France, in some good news from France, a record-breaking 12,000 people were baptized into the Catholic faith on Glorious Saturday this year. A secular state, half the French population does not believe in God. But according to the Bishops' Conference in France, 7,000 adults and 5,000 teenagers were baptized. The number has been growing over the years according to the available data. Here is the Rome Reports with more.
Muchas personas de mi edad.
Many people my age, 55 and older, find themselves feeling empty, and young people are searching. A secularized society is a society in which there is an emptiness, but there is also a search for meaning, for a zest for life. And today's young people are asking themselves, but what am I living for?
According to the French National Service for Catechesis and the Catechumenate, the search for answers to life's questions became more popular among young people between 18 and 25 years old during the months of quarantine due to the coronavirus. 5 years later, this is the group that is growing the most, now making up 36% of the newly baptized. Before the pandemic, they accounted for only 23%. The vast majority of this group come from a Christian tradition, but more of them say they belong to, quote, families with no religion. Many have received almost no Catholic education. France as a state broke away from the Catholic Church at the beginning of the 20th century. And today, secularism is a central concept reflected in the French Constitution, which a few weeks ago became the first in the world to include abortion as a constitutional right.
And coming back home, in Superior to be exact, pilgrims and families converged for a sacred gathering to consecrate themselves to La Divina Pastora, the Divine Shepherdess. The event unfolded during the Feast Day Mass on Good Shepherd Sunday, April 21st. This year's theme was consecrating families to La Divina Pastora, Mother of the Divine Shepherd. Catholic News Altos' Kaelan Jordan has more in this story.
Archbishop Emeritus Robert Rivers, in his inaugural visit to the annual celebration, emphasized the significance of both the feast day and the consecration of families to La Divina Pastora. He shared personal anecdotes of his own connection to La Divina Pastora, highlighting her nurturing presence in his journey to priesthood.
I saw all those acolytes coming in here today, and I said, God, take as many as you want. But are you ready to give your sons and daughters to God? If families are listening, praying, and generous in offering their children to God, then we will see the fruits of a church blessed with vocations.
Archbishop Rivers said the family face of the church is one of the most beautiful faces of the church, but it needs to be more visible. He raised concerns about the prevalence of familial strife, domestic violence, and a lack of forgiveness that is disfiguring the beauty of the family unit.
How can a 5-year-old child be decapitated in a home that is meant to be a safe place for any child? Home and family must be safe places, sanctuaries of life. Let us ask La Divina Pastora to intercede for the unity and the healing of our families. Take your mission seriously, families.
The statue was later taken through the streets of Siparia for the procession. The liturgy ended with benediction. I am Kaelan Jordan for Catholic News, Altos.
It's time now for us to take a short break, and when we return, we speak with well-known pediatrician and newspaper columnist Dr. David Bratt about the care of neonates in our nation's hospitals. Before we go, have a look at this week's trivia question. Thanks very much for staying with us. Over the past few weeks, the nation has been grappling with the news of multiple deaths at the neonatal intensive care unit at the Port of Spain General Hospital. Since those initial reports, several other parents have come forward to tell their tales of grief. So far, 16 families have come forward. Here to help us understand a little bit more about the situation is well-known pediatrician and newspaper columnist Dr. David Bratt. Dr. Bratt, welcome to Altos. Thanks for taking the time to be with us today. It's a very sensitive topic, and we know that there are lots of, people, there's lots of grief, there's a lot of emotion that surrounds this particular issue. But break down for us, what exactly is a neonate? What is a neonatal ICU? And how does a baby, what causes a baby to end up in a neonatal ICU?
Okay, so I am a general pediatrician, and pediatrics is the care of children from birth to age 18.
Okay.
And within that 18 age range, you divide up children. It gets very complicated because a child at birth is not the same as a 6-year-old or a 12-year-old or an 18-year-old. So that under 1 year of age, under 5 years of age, you talk about a child. Under 1 year of age, you talk about an infant. And when the baby is under 28 days of age, you talk about a neonate. Neonate comes, neo means new, and natum, nate comes from natum, which is the birth. So a newborn. That is a newborn.
And that is
a neonate.
under 28
Under 28 days. Under 28 days of birth. Child is born. On the 29th day, it's no longer considered a newborn. It's quite artificial, but the importance lies in the fact that, so if you have children who die, all the children who die, 3/4 of them die before they're 5 years of age. That gives you the importance of that.
Right.
Of those 3/4 who die, half of those who die before 5 years of age die before they're 1 year of age. And in that 1 year age group, half of those who die in the first 28 days of life. So in the first 28 days of life is when most children die. So that's the importance. Yeah. This is not only for children who are born preterm or low birth weight, this is for all children who are born under the age of 28. So you might have a full term, an 8-pounder, a 6-pounder, a 4-pounder, a 2-pounder. The death rate is very high, and it gets higher the smaller the baby gets. And the reason for that is babies are not supposed to be born at 25 weeks or 30 weeks or whatever, when they're weighing 2 or 3 pounds. Their organs are totally immature. They can't breathe for themselves. Some can, most can't, so they have to be assisted. So you have to put a tube down into their lungs and pump air into it for them to live. They can't eat for themselves, so you have to feed them. And that means either putting a tube down through their nose into their stomach, or putting a drip up and feeding them intravenously. And all sorts of things are a problem. The infection control is abysmal. They have no immune system that really functions. So they have to be kept in almost a sterile environment, which happens automatically inside the womb. But once they're outside, even if you have them in an artificial sort of room, incubator, which is the incubator, it's not the same. It's very easy for them to get infected. And if you don't have strict infection control, if we're talking about newborn babies, premature babies in a NICU or a natal intensive care unit, means that you have to isolate that baby, and you have to isolate the nurse and who is taking care of that baby. So it should be a one-to-one situation. So there's no chance of cross-infection.
Contamination of any kind. Okay, reading your column, you've indicated that we've come a long way from since when you came back to Trinidad, to practice. We've come a long way from since then. But what have we done, and this is not the first time the situation like this is taking place. What are we doing right? What are we doing, or what can we do better to ensure that these things do not recur?
Well, what has happened is that we now have trained neonatologists who are pediatricians who trained in the taking care of newborns. And we also have some neonatal nurses who have trained in the care of newborn. Not everybody can do this. Right. We don't have enough, especially as far as the nurses are concerned. We have about 8 or 9 neonatologists who are these specialists trained in the country. And when the first 2 came back, we saw a dramatic drop in the number of children who were dying before they were 28 days of age. And we have reached a certain point, we have improved tremendously. But to get even better, we need to start having proper built neonatal units that are built to take care of newborns. What we have right now, basically at Port of Spain and San Fernando especially, are upgraded, what used to be called the PREM units. They are much better than they used to be when I was there for the 14 years that I practiced at Port of Spain. But they still are not state-of-the-art. And this is the next step that we have to do. So state-of-the-art building, state-of-the-art nursing, state-of-the-art doctors, and all of the associated equipment that is needed.
That come with it.
That's the step that we have to, and that is what I hope the Pan American Health Organization team in Trinidad now is going to say.
Okay.
It's been said years ago, in 2002, 2003, we did a bit, but we didn't do enough. Now, you have to keep in the back of your mind that regardless of how good the care is, premature babies, preterm babies, low birth weight babies are going to die. That's a fact of life. Even in the best of hands, they die because they're so delicate and susceptible.
And they're so compromised.
So compromised. Immune compromised, respiratory compromised, brain compromised, everything is compromised in them. They're very delicate.
So, Dr. Brad, is this a unique situation to Trinidad?
No, it's not unique. And I've done some reviews and I talked to the neonatologist, and it turns out that in the best of care in the world, about 1 in every 10 babies in a newborn unit gets an infection. Not all of them die, but the infection is incredibly common. It's 10%. It's very, very high.
Babies.
Yeah.
Given the situation that has occurred at Port of Spain, and now we're seeing more parents whose babies would have died even long before this outbreak, so to speak, in April, coming forward. We've had expectant parents who are now expressing grave doubts and fears about going to the public health system. What do you say to them?
Well, 2 things first of all. The infection that caused the uproar happened, the babies who died over a period of 3 or 4 days. Very self-limited. Unfortunately, it seems to me now that some parents, and you know, when a baby dies, it's awful. A baby shouldn't die. They die. But people are now trying to say that babies who died a month ago, 3 months ago, 6 months ago, try to bring them into this infection thing. That's difficult. That's going to be difficult to do and going to be difficult to prove. Babies, unfortunately, as I said, in the best of hands, premature babies are going to die. What was the other question?
The question, what do you say to parents, expectant parents?
Yes, I'll repeat basically what the Minister of Health said a day or 2 ago. Every day in Trinidad and Tobago, we take care of thousands and thousands of people, and the outcome is good in the vast majority of cases. Just yesterday, I had a parent in my office whose baby was born prematurely and was taken care of at the Port of Spain Hospital, and I asked them, what sort of treatment did you get? And I asked this question all the time. And the mother hesitated, looked at the father and said, you know, well, doctor, we had an excellent experience. We need more people who have had good experiences to come out and say they have had good experiences, so that people will stop fearing. To me, as a pediatrician, when I think, if I have a baby who is going to be born prematurely, and I know the mother can't hold the baby, I want the baby at the Port of Spain Hospital or Eric Williams or at Mount Hope. That's where I want the baby to be born. I don't want a baby. People need to know this. The private sector cannot take care of premature babies. They can't. The private sector cannot take care of children, by and large. Any child who's seriously ill needs to go to Mount Hope or to San Fernando Hospital or Sangre Grande. I'm not clear about the other hospitals. I'm not sure what is going on there. And people need to understand this. The private sector can't take care of seriously ill children. It's the public sector which is doing a reasonably good job, in my view.
The Ministry of Health has engaged a team from PAHO to conduct an independent probe. What do you see, or what would you like to see come out of that? You've alluded to one point already, but what would you like to see come out of that?
Yes, I would like to see them make the recommendation that we reconstruct or build new neonatal units that are tailor-fit for taking care of preterm, low birth weight, premature babies that are properly staffed with the doctors, the nurses especially. The nurses are so important in any intensive care unit. They are really the ones. We can't continue with this 1 to 3. One nurse taking care of 3 premature babies, 1 to 4 in some. That is not what is called a level 3, which is what we're looking for. So that is what I hope is going to come out of this.
Dr. Bratt, there's a concentration or the emphasis is on the parents and their grief, the loss of their babies. But there doesn't seem to be that kind of emphasis on the impact of this on the nursing and the medical personnel. As a pediatrician yourself, as a member of the medical fraternity, what do you say to these nurses, these doctors who are manning these neonatal ICUs?
Well, first of all, I feel sorry for the pediatrician, for the neonatologist too, because it's heartbreaking. And I was speaking to one of them last week, and she was just torn up about what is happening. But then the nurses, the nurses are grieving. These are nurses that work hard in situations that are not the best, and they do their best most of the time, and yet now they seem to be being blamed for what is happening, and I don't think that is the right. The nurses are feeling, they're feeling this, and it must be terrible for them to have to come to work and know what people are saying. So I really, they need psychological support, just as the parents do, just as the doctors do too.
Yeah. Dr. Brad, we want to thank you very much for joining us today. We hope that when the PAHO report comes out, that we'll be able to join us again to perhaps to go through the recommendations in that
would be
report.
nice.
Dr. Brad, thanks very much.
Most welcome.
Pleasure.
Yeah.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
We are taking a leap of faith on Trinity TV. Jump in with us for this new and exciting experience.
The countdown has begun. We're 2 weeks away from the Catholic News Steps for Hope 5K and 1K run and walk. Remember, the race is open for everyone and will be staged on Saturday, May 11th, starting and ending opposite Archbishop's House on the Queen's Park Savannah. We're encouraging parishes and schools to sign up and enter teams of 10 or more. There are special prizes for everyone, and you can read more about this in the Catholic News. 102 and still going. Catholic News Altos wishes a happy belated birthday to Dominican sister Marie-Therese Ritou, who turned 102 on Tuesday, April 23rd. Sister Marie-Therese, who was born in France, served as the reporter for the Catholic News for many, many years and has been a historian for the Dominican sisters. We pray God's continued blessings on her. And we have one clergy anniversary in the upcoming week. Father Dennis Clifford Graham, who is based at Our Lady of Perpetual Help Church in San Fernando, will celebrate the 43rd anniversary of his priestly ordination on Friday, May 3rd. We wish him continued blessings as well in his priestly ministry. And in the midst of celebrations of birthdays and anniversaries, the Archdiocese was plunged into mourning this week when news broke of the death of seminarian Michael Maillard. Michael, who was midway through his training to become a priest, died on Tuesday at the San Fernando General Hospital. He was from the parish of St. Paul's, Couva. As news of his death spread, he was remembered as a loving and warm individual who had a deep love for Jesus. Father Matthew Dero remembered him this way, saying, quote, good soldier, Mike, you have gone to your King Jesus. Father Emmanuel Daffy remembered him this way, saying, quote, may we all be consoled that he led a worthwhile life. We are saddened by his demise. May God rest his soul in peace. Amen. Michael's funeral is on Monday, April 29th at 11 a.m. at St. Paul's, Couva. Now for a look at our upcoming events. Catholic News editor Raymond Sims gives us a preview of what's in this week's edition of the Catholic News.
Writer Kaylan Jordan interviews Marvin the King Lewis, creator of the inspiring song The Call, which went viral upon its release. And if you are guilty of cutting the Bible, read this article by Vicar for Communications Father Robert Christo to learn why Catholics should not. This and more in this week's Catholic News. I am the editor, Raymond Sims.
And so we've come to the end of this week's episode. Thank you for tuning into Altos this evening. We leave you with some footage from the La Divina Pastoral Procession to the streets of Cypriea and the choir singing a hymn to the Divine Shepherdess. Have a great week, everyone, and remember, give generously to the Haiti collection.
On the streets already. acolytes are in front of the procession. The police are leading, but Vladimir is still trying to come out of the church.